Hi, welcome to a new show on entertainment for Eshy TV. I am Quincy Lell.
I'm Audrey Williams.
And this is going to be seasonal spiels. We're going to talk about anime, manga, anything current specifically happening. Obviously, sometimes there's better shows, more popular shows, which one of them we'll be talking about today. Also, any big news. We'll try to stay more on anime than on manga, just because that's more wide-reaching, has a wider audience. Starting off, just a little intro to ourselves. Mm-hmm. You might guess we like one anime in particular.
Yes.
Just maybe, the shirts.
Might be wondering why we're repping One Piece right now.
Just a preface, we're not talking about One Piece. I love it.
Yes.
It's not what we're talking about. Unfortunately, because the manga's fire right now. That's spoiler-free, though. Trust me. Mm-hmm. No one needs to know. So, currently, my favorite manga is One Piece, but honestly, my favorite anime right now is probably Hunter x Hunter, just because I haven't had anything top that recently. Mm-hmm. Frieren was good, though, from this year.
Honestly, my favorite manga right now is also One Piece. I haven't been keeping up with it as much. Like, I meant to...
It's still good.
It is, yeah.
You're in Wano, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty far. Not all the way caught up. Definitely one of my favorites, just in terms of, like, overall story, character building, etc. To kind of segue into what we're talking about now, I do really like, at least what the anime is doing, My Hero. The anime is really good right now, I'm not gonna lie.
I feel like with Studio Bones, it's always good.
Yeah, true.
The animation's definitely one of the key points. So, in case you couldn't guess, today's topic is going to be My Hero Academia, mainly because not only is the anime airing right now in its seventh season, sorry, they come out so weirdly. I also dropped it, so we'll get to that controversy later. But the manga just finished, so that's also what we're going to be talking about. So, full disclaimer, there will be spoilers. We're talking about all of MHA, so if you don't want spoilers on the manga ending, leave. If you don't care, leave. If you want controversy, that is what we're here for. So, we're going to be doing hot takes. I'm going to be doing hot takes.
I have some as well.
We have positive. It's just going to be mainly negatives. So, if you don't want that, also leave. So, without that, we're going to get right into it. We will start high and then go right down all to the lows.
Yes.
So, okay. Let's start with you. You have a better positive attitude toward the show than I do.
Just because I'm currently keeping up with it, or at least trying to, even when I say currently keeping up with it, mainly I'm watching the episodes that I know I will care about. So I have more to say on the positives. But one of the things that I really appreciate about the show is the soundtrack. Not just the openings and endings and things like that, but like the soundtrack that plays throughout every episode of the show. The composer for the soundtrack his name is Yuki Hayashi. He does great work. I think one of the things that I appreciate about his work on the show is that he will take like music that's attached to a character, if that makes sense, like themes within the show, my fault. And he will repurpose them. So say like you have Yusei Run, it'll get like reworked into a different track, like by a different name, but it still has that like theme that Yusei Run does, and I really like the like overall like reworking that he does with a lot of the soundtrack. It's really good. There's not just that. I mean, there are a lot of tracks that I could go into. Two of the big ones, Revengers plays a lot when Deku does anything like really cool.
It's just like 90% of the time.
Yeah, that one's mainly attached to him. I think they started using it in season 6, but since then they've been using that for big fights with him. And then Spirit to Succeed, I think was originally for one of the movies, and then they played it recently in season 7 in a big fight that I won't, we're going into spoilers a little bit, but it's a big fight with Bakugo that one plays during, and it's a really good one also.
Yeah, I'm not watching the anime right now at all. Only thing I've read since, or like any new My Hero stuff since, again, spoilers, Lady Nagant, is that how you say her name? She died.
I think so.
Remember, she died, right? Which was fine. She was trying to assassinate Deku, so it was good that she died. Sad, I guess. I don't know. I have no attachment to these characters. It's not a show I really care about, as you can tell. Controversy over here. Big wall here between who doesn't like it and who accepts it and still keeps watching it. Yeah. I can't. I drop it. But I read the last chapter out of context. Also, we'll get into that for sure, because I have complaints. Just out of context, I have complaints. I do want to talk about one more thing with the openings and endings you mentioned.
Yes.
They are so iconic. I will put that up. Again, have not watched season 7, but the latest one I remember really liking was Bokurano, by Eve. But also animation for that was also really good. They usually do well with the animation with Studio Bones, for sure. It was also Peace Sign by Kenshi, right? Who also did the Chainsaw Man opening. Also fire. But yeah, I think just overall, aesthetically, music does help make a show.
Yes.
Animation helps make a show. If it doesn't look good, if it doesn't sound good, people aren't going to care how good it is. It doesn't matter. If the plot is the only thing keeping it alive, that's not a good sign. So it has everything going to support it. I personally think it just could have done a lot better in general as a story, which we'll get into. So, for now, I do think the characters and the character designs are definitely one of the highlights for My Hero. They have a lot of characters. Like, 20 students.
True.
20 students in one class. That's not to count, like, all the pro heroes. That's just the students. Yes, you're following Deku the whole time. But he has friends.
So then you have, like, other Class B also gets introduced at one point.
Yes. I do like the little plugs with Hatsume, though. She makes me laugh every time I see her.
Yeah.
I also feel like, as much as there is a lot of heroes presented and a lot of students that they talk about, could have done a little bit better with those characters. I think that the character development really shines with the villains.
True, yeah. Because it's definitely a lot, you get depth with the main characters too, but I feel like the villains, definitely, like, their development is not only, I mean, it's, like, focused on themselves, but it also, like, highlights deeper issues that makes it, like, more compelling and more interesting to hear about than...
For sure.
Because there are things to like with the development of the main cast, for sure, but they don't, like... It's mainly, like, targeted on them. It's not necessarily shining light on, like, other things within society.
Yeah, especially because,
which is fine,
like,
but...
it's also just about them developing as heroes, which just is not as engaging to watch. I feel like the villains are just more relatable because they, like you mentioned, have underlying issues about society worked into their development as a villain.
Yes.
Which just is really interesting. I feel like Dabby is the best example. Plus, I also love his character design. I'm sorry he has skin stapled to himself. That's painful. But also, you look really cool.
Very true,
I feel like just that entire story. Also, again, we're getting to spoilers. So his past as Toya, like, really underlines not only, like, the issue of, you know, being any kind of hero, you know, kind of almost being just such a pedestal in society. Like, heroes are just otherworldly beings, almost godlike, as if they're not human and don't have their own issues. But Endeavor himself being such an abusive father to Toya, and how that really wrecked himself, not only physically with him pushing way past his limit to train to be a hero, but also mentally and emotionally with that psychological abuse too, of you're never good enough and I need to have another kid because you're not going to be the hero I need to surpass All Might. And that's just really... That's so relatable, I feel like, those type of family dynamics. Unfortunately, a lot more relatable. I
Maybe
feel
not
like
the specific, like,
Yeah.
I want to be here. But yes.
Yes.
Definitely, like, the overall themes are unfortunately probably relatable to many people.
Or just engaging to watch.
Or, yeah.
Because then you want to root for him, even though he's kind of psychopathic in the end, after those years of abuse have kind of done their toll on him. Mm-hmm. But I digress. One last thing about character designs, though. The hero outfits.
Yes.
I love Bakugo. He just looks like a giant explosion. Can we focus on how... It's like My Hero was like, we know we made these quirks. We know we exaggerated them in the person. Like, Bakugo has spiky hair.
Yeah.
You have Froppy, you know, who's like, you know... She looks like a frog.
Yeah. I think especially it does a really good job of, like... It highlight... Well, okay, with Bakugo it might be a little overboard because his gauntlets are literally grenades. But I feel like that says more about him specifically than it does about the character design. They take what I want to the support course and are like, hey, I want this incorporated into my costume. Do this for me. So I think that says more about him. But, the show definitely does a really good job of highlighting what their quirks are through their costumes, but not in a way that's, like... I don't want to say overwhelming. But in a way that's not, like...
Cheesy?
Yeah, cheesy. Because it is showy, but it's supposed to be. It's just not, like, corny, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't look corny to me.
I think that's just because of the stylization of the characters themselves without their outfits that helps. Mm-hmm. Because, like, when you look at Sue, she looks pretty much the same. She just doesn't have the green outfit on.
Yeah.
And the kind of wetsuit to make her look even more frog-like than her quirk already makes her look like. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of benefits from that and just turns it up a notch or two.
Right.
To really emphasize what quirks these people have and what kind of heroes they might be. King Explosion Murder might be a really interesting name for someone trying to save people.
Right.
Very funny. But the quirks do suit the personalities of the people who own them, for sure. Bakugo, so explosive, so short-tempered, and also so prideful. He needs attention. This man needs just everyone looking at him and praising him.
Mm-hmm.
So what better to call out, hey, I'm here, than an explosion?
Exactly.
Do you have a favorite?
Oh, that's a tough question. Because I really like Bakugo's hero costume.
Yeah.
But I think outside of him, one that I've gained new appreciation for is Ashido's hero costume.
Ooh.
Because I recently learned that in the anime, her acid is shown as like white, but apparently in the manga it's supposed to be colored purple. So her costume being like that teal and purple color is because if her acid was purple, the costume would kind of like help to hide it a little bit. And I really like that concept, but the anime kind of messed it up by making her acid a different color.
Why is it white?
I don't know. I really do not. Maybe they didn't know that or something.
I mean, that's a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not to segue into One Piece, but that's a very thing. Like, when you're doing a weekly anime, you're never gonna know the color scheme until Oda's like last minute, nope, this is the color, and they've already done the episode in a certain way.
It was probably a situation like that, but
it probably was just too small a detail to really correct on site kind of thing, maybe.
They're like, we already have this, so
we're rolling with it.
Yeah.
Like, everyone knows what it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
So maybe that's why. But that actually is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I do think one of the best ones, aside from Bakugo and apparently Ishido now, that's really cool, is Ochako's. Just because she just looks like a cute little astronaut.
Yeah.
Zero gravity there. I think that is cute.
Mm-hmm.
Just cute.
I don't know where it comes from, actually. It might be like a popularity contest, like art design or something like that. But the author, like, drew her costume with, like, a different style to it, and it looks really good.
Really?
Okay. And I do wish I know it's, like, a one-off thing, but low-key I was like, man, why couldn't that have been, like, the actual design? Because it was really good.
Man, I actually kind of thought that about, I think it was the third one, they had, like, the winter hero outfits, and I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And then it was gone in, like, 5 minutes. I was like, why? It was so cool. Why would you change that?
Thing.
Why would you tease it? And then they like had normal clothes on, I think, which was just lame.
Yeah.
No one cares. Just to stay on pause a little bit more before we really get into the juiciness of it. Quirks as a concept to like make it more fantasy and sci-fi, I think are really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like how they're hereditary, which does impact how new quirks come about. Like you could have. Well, I think the best example is obviously Shoto Todoroki.
True.
Come on, half and half right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ice and fire. Makes sense. But I also do think how it's not necessarily limited to that is also cool because, like, you know, some people could have, like, those parents and then, like, have telekinesis as a quirk. I feel like, obviously it's been diluted, I think, just how the range and fits more hereditarily. I think now that they're, like, however many years since the first quirk appeared? I don't remember. They repeat it all the time.
It's at least, like, because
it's at least 4 generations, though.
They mention that when Izuku gets diagnosed as quirkless, the doctor asks his mom, like, what generation are you? And she says 4th.
Yeah, so
there's at least 4.
So basically probably, like, a 200-year gap.
Yeah.
Most likely, if they have more than 50 years to live, I would presume they are similar to our society where you live till about 80, probably. Right. I think this is pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, too. There's some good points, but they turn negative. I think, case in point, the premise of the plot. Okay, who doesn't love an underdog? A quirkless boy, bullied, wanting to be, like, the greatest hero of all time, All Might, only to be like, oh yeah, here's my power, eat my hair.
Yeah.
Doesn't that take away the whole underdogness of it?
A little bit.
Because he could have been the first quirkless hero. I think that would have been a lot more empowering.
I have seen people, like, run with that concept in fanfiction before, and it has been, like, it's interesting to see that play out, and it makes you wonder, like, why, with the fact that he set up this idea of, the quirkless being, like, I don't want to say the bottom of society, but they get bullied. They get treated like the bottom of society.
Like, worse than villains almost sometimes. Yeah. It's like, oh, you're quirkless? You don't have a life.
No, exactly. And with that being set up, like, I understand that he's still, like, kind of an underdog in the sense that, like, he needs to learn how to use this power. He's not just been given it and immediately, like, knows how to use it. But I don't think it's as compelling as him, like, finding a way to be a hero without that power.
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like that's definitely more interesting.
And I think it would have been more empowering because the whole, like, first episode is him getting bullied by everyone.
Exactly.
And I'm just questioning, why is it then a chosen one thing when you started off so strong with this bullying aspect? Like, there's a darker undertone to society, hating, or not hating, but, like, really discrediting these people's, livelihoods just because they don't have, like, a quirk. Even if some of them are really lame, like, your eyes just getting out of your head or something.
Yeah,
like that kid in the background of the class, right.
I know that he couldn't, like, the author, couldn't, like, spend a lot of time, like, developing the background characters as quirks, but it's really funny to see them bullying Deku and being like, and I have to sit there and be like, well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But that's a different...
Yeah, that's a different thing, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, personally, what could have been utilized better was that inherited power, because, like, yes, eventually Deku is like, oh my gosh, I'm inheriting the other quirks of the previous users. Cool, so you're all for one 2.0. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
How does that help with the whole vibe of, like, I'm an underdog? Because it doesn't fit. It just gets scrapped, like, halfway through season 2, I feel like.
Yeah.
That underdog vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Because he starts, learning how to use his powers before he fights Stain.
Yeah.
So I feel like as soon as that starts happening, you've lost.
Mm-hmm.
You've timed out the underdog vibe, which really is just disappointing because I'm a sucker for inherited will concepts.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you've inherited my power, inherited my will to be the best hero and defeat the worst villain all for one. But then it never really comes to fruition for me.
Yeah.
In that way, at least as an underdog. As a chosen one, yeah, sure, it's the cliche, it works. Harry Potter defeats Voldemort, Deku defeats Shigaraki, cool, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I digress. I feel like that's just part of the issue there.
Yeah, definitely.
But what is the metric again for quirkless?
It's 80% of the world has a quirk, 20% does not.
So what's that? 1 out of 5 has no quirk?
Yeah.
Where are these people?
Exactly. That's
sorry.
another problem.
I'm sorry. I get you want to draw quirks. That's cool. But even in the class of Midori getting bullied, you're telling me he's the only one out of like 20 kids who has no quirk.
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy it.
There definitely should have been more. Like, I understand that he is like the main, like, he's supposed to represent that, like, statistic, I guess, in a way. But it would help to have, like, a few other people.
It would help to run into canon characters. I'm sorry,
Right.
Was it Melissa? Who's on Island? She doesn't count. She's fake.
She's from a movie.
She's
so
from a
it
movie.
doesn't- Yeah.
She's not in the
doesn't
story,
carry
so
over.
it doesn't carry over. It doesn't count. So where are these? Like, you clearly know they exist because you put her in the movie as a really big, prominent character. Oh, this quirkless daughter of this genius inventor. Why couldn't we have that in the story?
Yeah.
I feel like that would have shown how far Deku has come if he can confront those people and still bring hope to those people, even though he has a quirk now. That really would have pushed me and sold me more on Deku and his chosen one vibes. Because, like, when Shinso confronts him about, you've been born with this, you've been handed with this great quirk while I have a villain quirk.
Yeah.
It hurts Deku because he hasn't gotten that opportunity in his life. This is the only chance he's gotten. And so that's why he's pushing so hard, just like Shinso is, who wants to be a hero but, got to the business class because... brainwashing doesn't work on robots, unsurprisingly.
Right.
Kind of need a mind to brainwash.
Need a brain to brain. Yeah.
Yeah. Yo. The issue is that it's 1 out of 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
If it was like 2%, I could buy it.
Yeah.
Because then Deku would be really rare at that point.
Exactly.
Which would make more sense, I feel like, for the bullying he got, considering later on, I get you're showing that these heroes are good people, or hero students as well, but no one really, like, looks down on quirkless in UA. Maybe it's because there are no quirkless in UA.
True.
But, like,
so
I feel like...
to think about it.
Yeah, so they don't have to think about it. But even then, I feel like they're so morally right anyway for it, by being in that school anyway for being heroes. Because they're, like, the cream of the crop already. So they're supposed to be, good people anyway.
Right.
But I feel like it just doesn't help when the ratio is 1 out of 5 and not, like, 1 out of a million or something.
No, exactly.
Like, it's got to be a little rarer if you're not going to show any. I feel like that also hampers the whole downtrodden quirkless people.
Especially because they repeat it at the beginning of every single season.
That's the hammer home. They repeat it so often. Like 12 episodes. If you're binging, this is how it goes. You have it the first episode. 12 episodes later, you have it again. 12 episodes later, you have it again.
Right.
Like, it repeats. It's not like the words change. They're the same words. It's the same images, isn't it? The world, the telekinesis guy, like the flying girl. Like, it's the same people.
It's the same, like, visuals that they use every time, and they say it every season, and it's like, you can't forget.
You can't forget it.
Like they make sure that you know.
I forgot because I dropped it, but...
Yeah. They do it in the movies, too.
You're so right.
Yeah.
They do it at the beginning of the movie. See, they want you to remember this because they're like, Deku is so rare. But he's not. He's 1 out of 5 people. If you take, like,
5 seconds to think about it, it's like... Because I would understand if, like you were saying, if the ratio was a lot smaller. If the ratio was closer to, like, the amount of, like, redheaded people in the world...
That makes more sense.
That would make more sense, because you don't see that a ton. Like, I still see, like, people with red hair, obviously, but, like... Not...
I don't have red hair.
Yeah. Hey. But I see people that have red hair, but not like all the time.
Yeah.
Like definitely a good amount of the time, like within every class that I take, I'm like the only one. So like if it were like that, I could believe it because I've seen like how that like small percentage like plays out. But 20% is like it sounds small, but it really is not.
In the world. There's 7 billion
Exactly.
people in our world.
Yeah.
Who knows how many are in that world? Probably more.
Oh, true, yeah, because it's supposed to be like
In the
however
future.
many generations in the future, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just crazy. Let's talk about why this becomes an issue personally for me to bring up this percentage, because let's just think about it. The quirkless are already bullied, as you can see in school. Even the teacher doesn't help Deku at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Like, he just is like, oh, Deku, stop whining. Like,
Yeah.
basically. I'm like,
Does
okay.
not see a problem with.
Yeah, but also, that also shows how even mature adults in this society look down on quirkless, which shows, a hidden layer of society, which I would have loved to be explored.
Mm-hmm.
I also would have loved the whole idea of, why are these people labeled as villains?
Yeah.
Like, that's just... The connotation of villain makes it sound so much worse than a purse snatcher. Like,
True.
you're just taking a purse, like, yeah, that's bad, but not like you're murdering someone. But villain just automatically puts this big, giant target, I feel like, on these people's back.
Mm-hmm.
And just shows how corrupt society is if they're
Yeah.
willing to just, hate and discriminate villains just because of, like, the label and not the actions.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's probably the best way to phrase it. It's just because...
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues, right?
Mm-hmm. I think the main thing about Hawks and the Public Safety Commission is that they basically raised him to be an informant both for hero, or like an informant on the villains for the heroes, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And I know that they get a little deeper into like what they have him do, but I haven't watched those episodes in a long time, so I don't 100% remember.
Yeah.
But I think one of the, because I have seen like people complain about this, especially with the manga ending recently, is that he becomes like after like the war has ended, dust has settled, everything like that, he becomes the president of the public safety. Yes.
Oh, so that's why he was in the desk.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice. I read the last chapter out of context, mind you. So.
No, fair. Which like I think the idea with that being like he's gonna start to change things because
Reform.
he has seen how like sort of corrupt the Public Safety Commission can be. But I don't know how I feel about it because it's not. But anyway, that's
it's not addressed.
Yeah,
I feel
it's
like,
just kind of implied and not really like, which is fine.
I think also part of it is like it's still hidden from most people, right? As a reader, we know like Lady Nagant hated her life because she was just told to assassinate all these people as a hero, but
Exactly.
like she was manipulated. Or kind of like the initial Hawks vibe where she was a pro hero on the outside, but for the Hero Public Safety Commission just to do their dirty work essentially. And like that's just so cruel to like raise a child to do that for you and still have this public face of like, oh yeah, I'm a hero.
Exactly.
I don't kill people, I arrest.
I promise.
I promise. So I feel like that also really hits deep because when you think about it, like these threads are so relatable to society now because society is pretty corrupt. We can't really hide away from that. We're emphasizing it more and more now. Think about like how quickly the war in Ukraine was heard about because of TikTok. Like people saw the visceral world of war via via social media. So I feel like that kind of concept really puts the forefront of like all these horrors in the public's eye without being able to like hide it behind a curtain. And at least in our society, and I wish that was brought over to the My Hero Society because they have such similar issues in their government as well, with the additional layer of like the quirk thing, and with heroes just so held up to the limelight and villains just so pushed into the crevices and deep dark trenches of society to where they have to just stay villains because they probably won't be hired. Like obviously criminal record, you have to divulge that to an employer, but like, you can't actively discriminate against someone because of their criminal record, usually. To a certain extent, obviously.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like anyone who sees a villain, they're like, oh, 911, hi,
Exactly.
pro hero ASAP, please, right here. Yep, we're going to record it, though. We're not going to run it for our lives. We're just going to... Which also the same mind brain right there as today's society. But yeah, I feel like that's a big part of it, too.
Definitely. I think, like, and another thing... with Hero Society being corrupt is that it gets brought up with I guess Deku and All Might by extension, the fact that like a lot of heroes are not necessarily in it for the hero part of the title, but mainly for
Endeavor.
for the glory and the public, like, just being up in the rankings, essentially. And we've seen, like, with, you've said Endeavor, like,
Yeah.
we see how that, like, obsession with getting up in the rankings can affect not only yourself, but others around you.
I mean, think about
But-
Stain.
Yeah.
The most, well, my opinion, one of the most compelling characters. He was right. Like,
No,
obviously don't go around murdering people to get what you think is right in the world. That's, like, just number one, don't do
Yeah.
that. But at the same time, it did catch everyone's attention, right? There suddenly had a huge, like, cult following after, they recorded his whole speech to Endeavor while he was unconscious, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
After he saved Deku, even though he killed other pro heroes who he was like, no, you're not a real hero. But Deku, All Might, y'all are in it for the good things. Like, you're just there to help people. You're not there to just earn money. You're not there to just get fame. You're not there for the easy ticket in life that hero society became before the war, obviously.
Yeah.
Wars is plural. Yeah, there were two. Making sure, because I didn't watch the second one or read it. However it goes.
Fair.
Is it happening season 7?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're in the middle of it in season 7.
Okay.
I was thinking of the manga because the manga's over. So, like, no in the manga, yes in the anime.
This is why we need a reference, guys.
Right.
Yeah, it'll flip flop for One Piece, but for now, yeah, okay. That clarifies things. I will point out though, it's kind of sad in my mind that this is true, but I also think it does show how well written the villains are. As much as we're talking about, just the villain classification being so disappointing that it's never really looked deeper into, because the classification itself is really interesting in my opinion for this world. However, I did love that whole, like, villain-centric fight that the Paranormal Liberation Front had against, come on, Shigaraki and them, come on. Wasn't that not awesome? Little Shigaraki focus and, like...
You're talking about when they, like, go into, like, the League of Villains, like, backstories and stuff like that?
Yeah, because they're fighting Gigantomachia, is that how you say it?
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
They're
I know
fighting,
what you mean.
They're fighting him to, like, get his loyalty, right? And then the Paranormal Liberation Front is like, yeah, y'all lame. We're better.
Essentially.
We're gonna act our plan and, rule the world. Shigaraki, you're nothing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the vibe, and then they come to odds and fight. That was, like, probably the best few episodes I've watched in the show since, like, the second season with Stain.
Yeah.
Which is sad. That to me anyway.
Because I will say that sort of clash was a lot more interesting to me than I guess it's the final war arc because it is the but like because the conflict from that does carry over a little bit into the final war arc, but it's not. It's like the final war arc is basically All for One comes back, and that's the main. Or not, well, that's like the big one of the big issues. Yeah. Obviously the other villains are there too, and they have like their big fight. Like I know that Toga is pitted against Ochako.
Right. Heard about that.
Dabi is pitted against Shoto.
Who could have guessed?
And I think Ida's there too, but mainly Shoto.
Yeah.
Shigaraki was originally supposed to be pitted against. I mean, this does end up happening. He's pitted against Deku, but at first, like, Deku gets launched, like, away from the fight that he's supposed to be at.
Okay.
So he ends up fighting Bakugo and a few of the other heroes first.
Of course. Gotta hype
Deku
up the
shows
hero.
up. Yeah.
Save
then
the
Deku
day.
shows up and then they're all good.
Yeah.
But
No. Okay. So I was kind of right in, like, some of my predictions for that fight, but I will say, it's not like it's bad that the villains are so well written that you want to follow them and enjoy when you do follow them and their exploits against, like, circling back to, like, them fighting against Redistro and, like, showing, hey, we're not just, like, some small group of one-timers who are now in the shadows and no one cares about. We're still here to do our, to reform society the way we want it to be. Either following Stain or Shigaraki, both, ideologies, or one ideology and one person, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of Shigaraki's followers, like Spinner especially, were there for Stain, Toga as well, but then they stayed for Shigaraki, which was cool. Just cool little backstory moments of their, like, camaraderie.
Yeah.
Because you don't see that, I feel like, when they're fighting the students of 1A. They're just there to, like, bully kids, essentially.
Yeah.
I feel
it also, like, makes it more interesting.
It does, because then
Like,
you have,
them
like, the two ideologies clash.
Yeah, or even, like, the League of Villains being so tightly knit makes it immediately more interesting to me, because if they were just, like, working together out of convenience, I wouldn't care so much.
But it's the fact that they've stuck through it, even fighting, like, 24/7 against Gigantomachia.
Yeah.
But I feel like getting that little deeper insight into their relationships really helps highlights and like kind of support them when you follow them, because you know they're still the enemy at the end of the day. You're not supposed to root for them,
Right.
probably, but you do in this fight because you're like, well, I like these guys better than these jerks because they're kind of just, you know,
Or
hidden.
Even
society.
the villains, like, I'm rooting for what they, like, not their actions, but like what they're representing.
Yeah, I feel like they're
sure.
they're a lot more, because like arguably the Paranormal Liberation Front, before, you know, becoming part of the League of Villains, right, before the two merged after the end of the fight, was probably a better idea, except it was too anarchist. But at the same time, you can't say Shigaraki's plan isn't anarchy.
Yeah.
But I feel more passion in them and their desires, and you follow their exploits more comparatively, and they feel so much more aggressive and like determined than like the, what is it, like 200 people who were kind of just hiding in the shadows.
Yeah, because
Which
it's
is
more,
cool,
you have like
but-
faces to put. You
Yeah.
have like faces on these ideals and like people that, like, specific characters that you can care about versus like 200 plus people that like represent an idea that's like, okay, this is interesting, but I don't have like, I mean, I can, I don't have that like last missing, like, okay, this one character that I can connect it to.
Right, because the only one you really get to know is Reed Destro, but you don't really get to know him.
Yeah.
He's just this big guy fighting Shigaraki and then loses, and then becomes like Sims for the guy now. So which is funny. I will say that 180 personality. But yeah, I feel like besides that, kind of feel like MHA for me, hot take, I know, fell off after the Stain stuff, because I feel like from up to there you were following an underdog, you were following Midori as he struggled and tried to accept and like power through from like the bottom of 1A to like a more competent fighter and hero in the making, and then suddenly it became like, oh, I'm in the right, I'm strong, I'm a student, I'm good, I'm a hero, versus evil. To be fair, Overhaul was pretty bad.
Yeah. That's fair.
Don't take children and experiment on them. That's kind of messed up. But it just became like so, you know, black and white. I feel like you lost that gray, and you had so much potential for society's gray corruption to be explored in place of that. I feel like that could have been such a good undertone, especially after All Might, you know, retired. I feel like showing the rise of these darker thoughts of civilians, you know, losing faith in hero society could have been explored via the corruption of society. Because, like, it's a long time coming. It's just, you know, one final push of All Might retiring kind of pushed that to the limelight, how we shouldn't really rely on heroes anymore. They're not these gods. They're people too, but we also shouldn't even rely on them anyway, because there is some corruption happening with a lot of them.
Yeah.
I feel like it was just a loss. It was just lost potential there, and I get it. It's still, you know, a battle shonen. You just want to watch fights, sure.
Yeah.
But I wanted more because there was a foundation there, personally.
I think because one of the issues also is the time frame that it takes, but disregarding the last chapter, because I think the last chapter is what, 8 years?
Yeah, that
skip?
out of nowhere. I opened it up. I'm reading it. Okay. Oh, you're a teacher. Oh, 8-year time skip.
Yeah.
Okay.
But disregarding that, the time frame that the main show and the main series takes place in is what, 2 years?
Barely? Are they even second years?
They're like in the middle, or like in the beginning of their second year, I think. So it's
Really?
like, yeah.
Okay, finally
think
surpassed
by
the first year.
Yeah, I think by the time that the final war arc starts, for sure, they're in their second year. But
Okay.
that means that like everything before that has taken place within one school year, which is
Crazy.
sort of believable, but I feel like it would have, I mean,
It would have
definitely
benefited
crazy.
from like stretching it out and making it like more realistic time periods, because you're telling me they got attacked, weeks later they got attacked, weeks later, or I guess that's more of a month later, but it's still pretty close. Then like another semester rolls by, there's a war. And then another semester rolls by, the's a war. Like,
the
that's
other
so
thing
close
with that
together.
is that they're enlisting the students in these wars,
Right?
which is like,
They have a license, but isn't it provisional?
no, yeah, exactly. I think like,
You're making 16-year-olds fight, I'm sorry, what, 1,000 criminals? That's
Which,
great.
on the one hand, I get that that's a consequence of the genre. You're gonna have like teenagers fighting big battles.
Except
But on
when-
the other hand, the thing that we've established that they're in school and that these licenses only allow them to fight in specific situations. And I think
because there were
even,
consequences of that.
and it even like gets brought up a few times with like specific pro heroes being like, these are like just offhand, like these are just kids, they shouldn't be fighting these wars. And I have to sit there and be like, yeah, they shouldn't be. Like, you're right.
Like it's not like, okay, again, not the tangent, but it's not like a world like One Piece, which is set up to be much more rampant with criminal activities, and like, yeah, you have a world government, but not every corner of the sea has a government.
Yeah.
And you don't have like a standard education. It's a lot less civilized in a polite way of putting it, a lot less educated people usually. So like that's different. But in this society, it's been built up to be very similar to ours.
Mm-hmm.
Not only with, you know, education and, you know, civilizations in general, but just, you know, ethics, laws.
Yeah.
And suddenly, the people we once condemned for fighting Stain without their license, and then, you know, doing too much with their license, now are in a war.
Exactly.
For the whole of Japan.
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole freaking country, and you're telling me you only have these students to help you? You're telling me that many people retired? You had, like, what, 100,000 heroes, probably? You're telling me, like, 90,000 left in one night? Like, that's too high a ratio for me to believe, to be honest.
Exactly.
To believe to warrant children to add to your war.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They bring in, like, the number one pro hero from America. For,
Stars and Stripes, or Stripes or what?
They bring her in, like, beginning of season 7, because
I heard about it.
Shigaraki has become, like, such a big threat at this point that they need, like, I guess they've realized, hey, we need outside help. And so she comes in, and, you know, spoiler alert, she does not win against Shigaraki, because this happens at the beginning of season 1.
You're telling me the protagonist still has to defeat the antagonist?
Yeah.
Crazy.
I know, crazy work there, but it's just, like, for that fight was cool and everything, but the fact that they, like, set up, okay, we can bring people from the outside world, only, like, makes it more egregious to me that they haven't, like, or at least, like, they haven't said that they have tried contacting the outside world about this, because it seems like a pretty, like, it's a threat to Japan, for sure, but, like, if you let this go on for long enough, it's gonna spread.
Yeah, because...
So why would you not try, and, you know what I mean? I don't know.
It'd be different if they were containing the threat, but, you know, they lost power, clearly, because Tartarus, you know, got, like, broken out of, and all these criminals are now rampant, villains are now rampant
right.
across the entire country, though congregated by All for One. And it's like, you're telling me you have a military that isn't really putting out a containment of these people, because you're probably not tracking how many people are leaving the country, if I had to wager. And if I were a civilian, I'd be getting out of there, to be honest with you. There's villains, they just come kill me. I'm gone. I'm gonna take a vacation to America, thank you.
And they're centralized in Japan? Getting out of Japan.
Yeah, getting out of Japan, exactly. So I'm just baffled that, like, I get it. It's not like All for One's gonna ask for help. He just did his plan. He's sitting high. He's tormenting Deku slowly. Because didn't Deku do the little the vigilante arc or whatever? I dropped right after that started, so I don't know how long that lasted. To be honest,
I don't remember how long it lasted in the manga. I know that anime wise, I think it was like 4 or 5 episodes.
Oh, that was short.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it wasn't super long.
Okay.
But it gets brought on by the fact that, because the security at UA is so good, I forget what they call it, but it's like a security system set in place, that's supposed to be, like, very advanced and everything. And because of that, they invite, like, civilians to come, like, take shelter at UA. But one of the problems with this is that, basically, the fact that Shigaraki is mainly targeting Deku gets leaked.
Oh.
And so...
Right, I remember that.
Yeah.
Because that's why he was a vigilante. He was like, I gotta protect you.
Yeah. And so the civilians mainly the civilians that are taking residence at UA find this out and are like, hey, why are we letting him in here? We don't want, like...
Oh, he goes back?
Once he gets, like, brought back by Class A, there's, like, a huge, like, you know... like, civilians are gathered outside and he gets brought in and they see him and start, like... creating a fuss about it. They're like, why did you bring him back here? Like, Shigaraki's after him. We don't, like...
Want you here?
Yeah, he's targeting him. This is like, gonna bring him to us.
It's like that little, like, you know, hey, you know, we might get bombed. Go to the bunker kind of vibe.
No, exactly.
And then just take the target of the bombs into the bunker.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's real. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
but the main, like, vigilante... The reasoning for it is he doesn't want to cause, like, anybody trouble. Yeah, that's why he goes off on his own, but...
So overall, I just feel like there's so much potential that My Hero had that it could have explored better to get, you know, a little bit more depth out of the story.
Yeah.
And it never did. I also hate, you know, the transition to Chosen One and how now we're gonna get into it. That final chapter. I'm happy he's back to being quirkless. Yes, that makes sense. He defeated the big bad. He lost his power. Perfect. I'm fine that he's a teacher. That works for me. I don't like All Might being alive, for one. I'm sorry. You foreshadowed way too much that he would die. There's a statue of him people pray to. Why is he alive?
Yeah, I forgot about that entirely.
How is he better alive than being a martyr?
Yeah, true.
Right? Mm-hmm. He adds nothing at this point. So I don't like that. Sorry. I feel like, but adds nothing. I feel like he served his character arc and purpose perfectly, and should have died like when All for One got himself released and was controlling Shigaraki. He should have been dead in that like wartime period. I feel like as a martyr or something, just to like solidify that like this is all we have. Is this All Might statue? This is, you know, even though like Japan's like, you know, in rubble now. So anyway, but I also feel like it's really weird how they end. I think it's nice that, you know, Class A made the support equipment for Deku to test out to be a hero again. But why is Bakugo the one pushing this? I don't understand the whole dynamic. If Bakugo and Deku were supposed to be friends now, and and Bakugo is supposed to repent his actions, why did you have him plant suicidal thoughts in Deku's head in episode 1?
Yeah, true.
That's kind of dampers that. It's like the Endeavor redemption. Why is this abusive father, who's done this for like what, 2 decades, beat his wife, put her in what, an asylum or something? Why is he redeemed?
Yeah.
This was leaked. You know, you can see Toya Dabi as a really perfect example of this man's fathering technique. Why is he redeemed?
No, yeah.
He shouldn't be in jail.
Or with Endeavor, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But also Bakugo. It was a little weird.
Bakugo, I will say it's a little bit different because he was a kid also when
he literally told Deku to die.
No, I know that's bad, for sure. I'm not excusing that. I think, like, what they were trying to do with, him being the one to, like, it's all of Class 1A funding it, but he's the one spearheading the project to get that like suit built so that he can be a hero again. I think like the idea is that his atonement includes making him a hero again.
Okay.
Like fulfilling his dream for him, if that makes sense.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Endeavor, no, but I can get behind that.
Yeah. Endeavor, that. Don't even talk to me about Endeavor.
I know, right? I get you needed a powerful hero, and he is the new #1 right after All Might to like fight in the war. But shouldn't he have been arrested when civilization and society got back to normal?
Especially because I don't know if you know this.
What?
But
I probably don't. If it's after Lady Nagon, I don't know it.
One of the things that happens is that Dabi leaks the fact that Endeavor abused him and all of his siblings.
That was after, because I think that was when Endeavor was hospitalized, and they were like, "We're here for you, Dad," and then Deku's off being a vigilante, and I'm like.
So all of society know, or like at least the people that watch that broadcast know what Endeavor has done.
And they can investigate very easily.
But like. That just doesn't get brought up again.
It doesn't?
I don't think so. Or, like, he doesn't, like... If it does, Endeavor doesn't, like, face any, like, real-world consequences for it.
He should at least get, like, in prison for a decade. You would, like, this is heavy abuse. But I guess his family's like, no, we just killed our brother.
Yeah.
I guess. Is Daddy dead?
I think so.
Okay, we just lost our brother, but he was already dead, and we thought, okay...
He was, like, alive at the end of the war, but hospitalized, and then they visited him, and I think it's implied that he died after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, aside from that, I feel like also, what was the point of Shigaraki being sympathetic? Like, why would you make me care about Shigaraki? Why would you highlight that Deku wants to save Shigaraki, and then he dies, right?
Yeah.
What was the point?
I feel like I also do hate, the sort of, like... I don't know exactly how it happens, but I do hate that him and All for One kind of like merged, I guess.
Yeah.
With All for One like mainly taking over his mind.
Yeah.
And like I don't like that.
Yeah, it's
at
really
all because
cringe.
It makes like
it takes away from Shigaraki's whole development as a villain, from this whiny brat to like, no, Spinner, I'm confident. I'm taking over this paranormal liberation front. I'm spearheading this war. Yeah. I am the new danger. I am like the inheritor of All for One now. Just like Deku is the inheritor of All Might.
Like, they set that up really well, and then it's just like All for One is here.
I know, and it's so disappointing. Like, if I wanted to fight All for One, I'd fight him at his peak as All Might, okay? Like,
right.
I wouldn't... Like, we've been following Shigaraki. He's developed so much, as you've written. Why have we backtracked?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like there's just too many dissatisfactory endings overall, and lost potential. I also did drop it, and and part of it I did drop it is I could just binge the anime, right? Because it has good animation. It's pretty decent. I don't like some of the later story threads, but even then, some of the ones I did sit through and watch, like the school festival, that took forever.
Yeah, definitely with their, like, they do a whole lot of, their, like, downtime arcs. They stretch them out to the point where it's not really that fun anymore. Because they also, like, the school festival, don't they incorporate Gentle Criminal and Brava?
Which is fine. Which I liked.
I like them, yeah.
But that could have been its own little downtime arc.
Exactly.
Separate from...
Yeah. You don't have to incorporate that or like combine it with the festival. Like you can do that on its own.
Yeah, because I get the idea of making Eri smile, but then why are we focusing so much on y'all practicing your music and dance moves? I don't care. I'll see it when you want to show me. Like, it doesn't need to be shown every second of every day. And I feel like the issue is, like, because of how long it takes on these downtime arcs, I don't care when the next peak is hitting because I've been stuck in this valley this whole time that I'm just like, I've lost interest. Exactly. And by the time it comes back, it feels like, oh, suddenly there's this new villain we have to fight. Like, I feel like the last good setup was probably with Overhaul, because you had that setup with, you know, this was already a plan in place when Deku did his internship, right? It was an internship, or with what's his name? He died. He had the future court. Night-Eye. Thank you. Thank you. So Night-Eye. So that made sense because he just came in on board when a plan was already being executed and ran into Overhaul and Eri and all that. But the war stuff came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Also, I get the, like, 1A versus 1B fight is cool as a class, and Shinso joins, which is cool, but I feel like that's for a completely different story. Yeah. Like, we've already hit the real-world consequences and real-world fights with Overhaul. Why are we backtracking in, like, school fights? It should have been, like, closer to the
placement of that was weird.
The placement of that was weird. It should have been, like, after the Stain stuff, I feel like, before the Overhaul stuff, before things got really real.
Yeah.
But it's just so out of place. So anyway. All this to say.
Yes.
What do we think overall of the show? We're going to start with you, because I'm going to be way more negative.
That's fair. I think, overall, watching, like, characters get set up and have their motivations be laid out, and then, like, seeing, like, the payoff of it, if that, like, that's sort of a general way of putting it. But I like, in this specific story, like, just the specific character arcs that occur, they are really compelling, and it kind of sucks that the overall story doesn't, like, allow for, like, with the villains especially, it doesn't allow for, all of that to get paid off, but the setup for it, at least, is really nice.
Yeah. I feel like part of it that helped is, like, at the time when this show came out, it was, like, the peak of Marvel, right?
True,
at the time, like, everyone was following Marvel, and, like, all superhero movies were, like, really popular. You also had One Punch Man getting its first adaptation a little bit after My Hero, right?
Oh,
so
yeah,
I feel like this is the superhero craze. Opportune time to have My Hero as a concept, so, like, it became really popular over here. Kind of helped. Also, I feel like it helped that because people liked it so much, they cosplayed as these characters, right?
True.
And when you see these cosplays, you're like, what show is this? And so you get intrigued and learn more about it. And so I feel like just that all culminated into, like, no wonder we followed this show. It's a big hit, even in Shonen Jump, right? The
fandom definitely, like,
for sure
kept that alive.
Yeah. I do feel like what helped is that those first 2 seasons were good. I don't dislike those seasons.
Yeah.
I just like the fact that basically was a completely different premise of a show. Like, it was completely different to what it became is my issue, and how that changed, if that makes sense. That's our thoughts on it. So, also, one last thought before we, get into final conclusions for this episode, and obviously, stay tuned for more if you want a little sneak peek for next episode.
True.
Is it worth, in our opinions, for any of y'all to pick up or continue watching if you've dropped it? Again, start with you.
Start with the highest.
Start with you.
And definitely, like you said, the first 2 seasons, really good on their own. But, like, overall, if you're going into it with this expectation of, like, the issues with society that get brought up with Hero Society and, like, the labeling of villains and things like that, if you're expecting that to be paid off in a way that's, like, personally fulfilling, I would say probably not. Because that, like, the setup for that is really interesting. Like, the problem with Hero Society is not only villains, it's the fact that the people within Hero Society label other, like, quirks that aren't necessarily, like, heroic, I guess, in nature, or seen that way. They will label them, like, the people that have those quirks automatically as villainous, the treatment of the quirkless, like, things like that. If you're expecting there to be a, like, good payoff to that, I would say no. And again, like, people see things differently, so maybe, like, you go through the story and you think those things got paid off really well. I don't know. That's a personal thing. But if you're going in for, like, individual characters and their development, I would say, yeah, definitely it's worth it.
Yeah, I get that.
And cool fights. And good music. If you're going for that also.
I agree with that. I feel like overall it's definitely a decent show. I am kind of expecting probably too much out of it. It's just a battle shonen, what do I know? We're there to watch kids fight. That's basically what you're there to do. So, like, I get it. You're not supposed to look into a deeper meaning. I'm just disappointed because I feel like a lot of it's contemporaries, like even Jujutsu Kaisen, for instance. But even that has a lot more, I feel like, better payoff for its themes than the ones My Hero brings up. So I feel like if you're fine with just, watching people fight and, following a really righteous, morally right character who doesn't have much else going for them as a protagonist, fighting the typical antagonist in a gray, corrupt society who's become the villain, go for it. I just personally am just too disappointed by none of the payoffs, the fact that there is so much potential, the fact that some of the best villains are, like, either ignored or killed off. Like, Rip Twice, I'm sorry, he was a really cool character, and you killed him off in such a good way that you make me love the villains way more and care way more for them to succeed in their plans. Aside from All for One, weird.
Yeah.
Aside from that, so it just felt too disappointing for me how what ended up getting better limelight to me as character development were the villains and not the heroes we're following and supposed to be rooting for. Yeah. Which again could have been better if it weren't like typical heroes are still on the right kind of story. For me personally. But I would say overall, if your expectations are kind of lower than that and you just want to watch cool people with cool quirks fight each other, go for it. Yeah. It's still like pretty fun. Yeah. It's not like obviously we watched enough of it. I watched 6 seasons of it, so it's got something, I guess. It does help that the animation and sound is good, because if there wasn't good songs and things in the background, it doesn't really help if it doesn't look good too. So
yeah, exactly.
It's worth checking out if you like that sort of stuff. Obviously we do, because we watched it. But I think that pretty much wraps up our thoughts on My Hero. So before we cut out, next episode, if you like us, subscribe obviously to SGTV. We are here, we live here, we are part of the entertainment, so you'll find us. We want to talk about the JJK manga ending, since that's happening pretty much right now. I think some either second to last or like third to last chapter. We're on
something like that.
Something like that.
It's close.
It's very close. So we want to talk about that, even though the anime aired last year, beginning of this year almost. Yeah. I think so. Last season anyway. Rip Mappa, I'm sorry, but. Essentially, that's what we're going to be talking about with Dunmeshi, because that did come out earlier in the year and has been, I feel like, hitting really high highs this year, right?
Yeah, definitely. Especially with, like, the box set being announced, which I do want to get.
I pre-ordered it. Yeah, I feel like out of nowhere, this, like, dungeon, making food in a dungeon concept came out for fantasy lovers, and I thought it's really executed really well. Watch the first 24-episode season on Netflix if you haven't. We'll be talking about it next episode. But yeah, for Ashy TV, I'm Quincy Lowe.
And I'm Audrey Williams.
Thanks for watching.